But first up, he is a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian whose latest book is The Soul of America, The Battle for Our Better Angels. Jon Meacham. Jon Meacham. There he is. How are you? I'm good. And I just want to say, first of all, a lot of people know you from TV now. But you also write books, apparently.
I do in my spare time.
I see. I bet you a lot of people are not that sure about that. But I want to tell you, if you like Jon Meacham on TV, read his books. This guy is an amazing writer. And even if he was wrong about this stuff, it's a pleasure to read it. And the book is called Soul of America.
Right.
My first question, do we still have one?
We do. This
really?
is important. We do. But the soul, in full disclosure, is an idea that's not about what's just best about us. Socrates, all the way through the Hebrew and the Greek, always argued that the soul was the essence of life. It was breath. And so in the American soul, for instance, it's not just that, oh, 4th of July, everything's great. The soul of the country has room for Dr. King, but it also has room for the Klan. And every era is determined by which of those two forces wins out.
And see, here's the thing. The Klan didn't used to be this close to the White House. That's why I worry about your optimism.
No, it did. And I am optimistic.
Well, not in the modern era. Yes, Andrew Johnson certainly was a Klansman.
Well, in 1925, you had 50,000 Klansmen marching down Pennsylvania Avenue without wearing their masks. You had...
But Calvin Coolidge wasn't sympathetic to them.
No, but the Democratic National Convention in 1924 had 347 Klansmen who were delegates. You had an immense...
Wow, is that right?
Yeah, you had 4 million...
I feel better.
Okay, good. You had 4...
Tell me other bad shit about America.
Here it is, baby.
Yeah.
Now, I know you were on the air in 1866, I think it was cable access then. But
yes,
it's okay.
It was the Dumont Network.
But you had a president who was against the 14th and 15th Amendments, who, by the way, got impeached. So we can talk about that. In Andrew Johnson, you had, if we had been talking in 1919, 1920, you had Woodrow Wilson, who resegregated the federal government, who cracked down on 400 newspapers who disagreed with him, and who launched his attorney general for non-probable cause raids all across America.
But they were reflecting feelings in the country that were much more prevalent than they are today. I don't think about the Klan, about race.
Well, the Klan was the second Klan in the 1920s was a reflection. See if this sounds somewhat familiar. They were worried about a changing economy. They were worried about the culture shifting on them. They were worried about demographic changes. They were worried about immigration. There was a governor of Georgia who was a member of the Klan who called for, guess what, building a wall of steel to keep immigrants out. So if you think the 1920s is too far back to look at this, all right, let's go to the 1950s. For 4 years, Joe McCarthy terrorized America. He did so with the help, in many cases, of the press. The Hearst newspapers were kind of a Fox News of the era. In the 1920s, 1 out of every 4 Americans read the Hearst newspapers, and Hearst supported McCarthy. There were very few voices against McCarthy early on. A woman, Margaret Chase Smith, who was the Republican senator from Maine, came out against him early. It took the men, as usual, 4 years to catch up. But what we ended up with...
hate men, men suck. Always an applause break in America. Men suck.
But... And again, I'm not Mr. Rogers on C-SPAN here. I'm not arguing that everything is always great. But the point is, in my lifetime, in your lifetime, in my native region of the South, we had apartheid. Women have not voted in this country for quite a century yet.
Right.
We are not yet at the 3rd anniversary, it's coming up next month, of the marriage equality decision. American history, by fits and starts, has tended to get better. Why has it gotten better? Not just because of presidents, not just because of the Congress, but because of protest and resistance and people saying the country we want is not a country that closes its fists, it's one that opens its arms.
But here's the difference. In the cases you cite, I mean, Joe McCarthy was censured by the Senate, right?
Yeah, 4 years in.
Okay. The Senate's not going to censure Trump. They love Trump. I mean, what's frightening now to me is that the Republican Party has so quickly lined up behind this fascist. and they're in on it. And I think that's a fundamental difference. And I also think it's a flaw that the founders did not see.
Oh, I think the founders saw all this coming.
You think they saw Donald Trump coming? And
I think they would have been stunned that it took this goddamn long for us to get one. The whole Constitution was created.
And how do you think we're going to unget one?
I think we're going to. My own sense, we're going to unget one by, I think, a wave election in the midterm. I think the courts and the rule of law is going to prevail. And I think the people themselves, and this is not a populist argument on the other side, but how did we break down Jim Crow? How did we break down functional apartheid? How did women get the right to vote? They protested, they stood up, they had conversations like this, and ultimately those better angels did prevail. To the point where, what is the immigration issue in this country? The immigration issue is that people want to come here. So for all the having a mad king, which we do, who, as I've said to you before, if you knew who King Lear was, it would be like King Lear. For all of that, if you have enough of these forces, the people, the press, the Congress, which is, as you say, not in great shape right now, or the presidency, the courts, if you have enough of those forces working, then we will survive the crisis.
Yeah, but I don't know if we do. I mean, we definitely don't have the Congress. You talk about a wave election. Yes, we could impeach him. I think the Democrats will take the House. Don't get giddy, because it's what I have to say is
hubris.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I have to be the skunk at the garden party here,
no,
but
that's fine.
Yeah, no.
But you've done well with that.
But yeah. Yeah, somebody has to.
Somebody has to.
Yeah, because thank you.
But this is a.
But let me say the skunk point.
Okay.
Even if we win the wave election, that's the House. They will impeach him. Then you need 67 senators to convict, or else he's there. Clinton was impeached. He stayed there. Now you have a wounded animal, but not that wounded, because he'll just say fake news. He's more of a martyr than ever. You know that his approval ratings went up this week.
I do.
The crazier he acts. I'm not worried about a mad king. We've had presidents who didn't know shit before. I'm worried about someone who wants to be a dictator. I mean, look at this. Read his statement. I'll read you the statement from this week on the Justice Department. A rigged system. This is his own Justice Department.
Right.
Did any other president talk like this about their own Justice Department? Why such an unequal justice? At some point, I will have no choice but to use the powers granted to the presidency and get involved. Well, first of all, I don't think he doesn't know.
He doesn't know what those are.
No, he doesn't know it. He thinks he's a king. I mean, that's a direct threat. No. Is that?
If he can get off Twitter into Google, he might find out.
I wouldn't hold your breath for that, but is there a precedent for that, for a president warring on his own Justice Department the way he does, his own FBI, this deep state talk we hear about?
Well, if you listen to the Nixon tapes, yeah. And Nixon was convinced that the press was against him, that the Justice Department was against him. He had the Saturday Night Massacre.
A lot of similarities.
There are similarities.
Except he went.
But guess what? There's this fabled moment. Everybody talks about how Barry Goldwater went to the White House.
And Hugh Scott, I remember, yeah.
You know what date that was? August 7th.
Yeah, he quit the next day.
26 months into the Watergate scandal.
Right.
Barry Goldwater left public life with a very high profile, but it took 26 months.
But again, John, what was the message that they were bringing to President Nixon? The message they were bringing was, you have lost the support of the Republicans in Congress.
Right.
That is not a message anyone can deliver right now to this president.
Not right now, but what do we know chiefly about politicians? That they want to be reelected.
Right.
That they are far more often mirrors and molders of public opinion.
And that's what's so scary. That's why they won't turn on him, because the base loves him. And they know that he has a connection with their voters that they do not.
That's true. But you have to change those hearts and minds among the people. But you really do. Guess what Joe McCarthy's approval rating was after the Have You No Decency, Sir?
I don't know.
34%. You can get 34% of the country to say damn near anything.
Right.
This is a battle about the 20% who either aren't paying enough attention, who are beginning to be worried about the fact that Rudy Giuliani, after a pretty clearly liquid dinner the other night, don't you think?
Yeah,
I mean,
something.
Anthony Trollope used to say that he dined freely. That was the Victorian code for that. You have to get to the 20% who are accessible by, and my whole argument in this, again, is not that everything is going to be a fairy tale. It never is. There was never a once upon a time, and there's never a happily ever after. But you can get, because you did it with women's suffrage, you did it with civil rights, we did it ultimately with the union of the country, we've done it with marriage equality.
Those are issues, not this. I don't see him leaving under any condition, including people knocking on the door with guns. But he'd be Scarface. He'd be watching on the security camera. Say hello to my little friend. Okay. I badgered you.
Don't you think he'd send Jared out?
Yeah, Jared. All right, it's a great book. Thank you for trying to cheer me up, John. And everybody should read it and feel better.